And Coulter's rather public piece, 3 cheers for Romneycare. I don't believe in 3 cheers, ladies and gentlemen, for utopian tyranny and socialism. I think I lost my place here. Where am I? I'm reading it off the web. Let's see. Okay. The hyperventilating over government-mandated health insurance confuses a legal argument with a policy objection. Oh, really? What would that be? She says if Obamacare were a one-page bill that did nothing but mandate that every American buy health insurance, it would still be unconstitutional. But it wouldn't be the god-awful train wreck that it is. It wouldn't even be the god-awful train wreck that high-speed rail is. Really? Now, some of us think, and we've been arguing to the Supreme Court, that this individual mandate changes the relationship of the individual to the government. In the case of Obamacare, particularly, the relationship between the individual and the federal government. Ann doesn't think that would be a god-awful train wreck if that and that alone were the problem. But that is the main problem with Obamacare, ladies and gentlemen. When Congress can order you to enter into private contracts against your best interests, against your will, or fine you, or penalize you, or sick the IRS on you. I'm waiting for the long list of examples in history of that. But I don't see them in her column. They don't exist. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Ann is the one who's confused here. Under the Commerce Clause, there's no denying the federal government can regulate commerce. It can tax it. It can even ban it. But it cannot compel an individual to enter into it with another private entity against their will. There's not a single Supreme Court case that supports that. None. There's not a single argument by any of the founders of the Constitution to support that. None. There's no example in American history to support that. None. The Obama administration's been looking and looking and looking and can't find any. Now, Ann concedes that it's unconstitutional, but her point is, what's the big deal? The big deal is it fundamentally alters the relationship of the individual to the government. You even heard some of the congressmen saying on the Hill when they were holding hearings on this. So if the government can compel you to buy health insurance, to enter into a private contract, not tax you to pay for it, enter into a private contract to get it with another private entity, then what's to stop them from ordering you to buy asparagus? I don't know. I'll have to wait for Ann's next column. She goes on, it would not be a 2,000-page, trillion-dollar federal program micromanaging every aspect of health care in America with enormous, unresponsive federal bureaucracies manned by no-show public sector union members enforcing a mountain of regulations that will bankrupt the country and destroy medical care as liberals scratch their heads and wonder why Obamacare is costing 20 times more than they expected, and doctors are leaving their profession in droves for more lucrative careers, such as a video store clerk. Nothing good has ever come of a 2,000-page bill. Really, she just gave an explanation for the sort of things that are beginning to happen in Massachusetts at a very smaller level because it's a state, not the federal government. There's not much governors can do, Ann Coulter writes in 3 Cheers for Obamacare, about the collectivist mess Congress has made of health care in this country. They are mere functionaries in the federal government's health care leviathan. I love that word. That's right. So every governor is compelled to do what Romney did, right? Because of the mess that the federal government has made, there's only one response: Romneycare. Governor can't repeal or expand the federal tax break given to companies that pay their employees' health insurance premiums. Tax break, this is all subterfuge. This is all diversionary. The governor can't order the IRS to start recognizing tax deductions for individual health savings accounts. No, he can't. The governor can't repeal the 1946 federal law essentially requiring hospitals to provide free medical services to all comers, thus dumping a free rider problem on states. You know, states can deal with that. While the state has to agree that hospitals have to pay for these things. Why can't you garnish wages, seize assets, do all those things for individuals who really can afford their hospital care and their medical care, but simply refuse to pay for it? I'm not defending what the federal government does. I'm objecting to what Romney did. More when we come back. You will find us as consistent as possible. I'm not perfect. Make my mistakes. But to blatantly expose yourself like this, my dear friend Ann, 3 Cheers for Romneycare absolutely requires a response, lest many, many people think that Romneycare is no big deal. lest many people believe that Romney Care could even be argued as a conservative policy or program. Maybe that's why Krispy Kreme Christie, Ann's other favorite governor in New Jersey, has chosen not to sign his name to a single brief defending individual liberty against Obamacare. I guess these are the new conservatives. So confused. Oh, and then there's Jennifer Rubin. I don't know who the hell she is. She came out of Hollywood. Suddenly she's the conservative voice at the Washington Compost, which tells you plenty. It wasn't that long ago she was mocking Mitt Romney when he gave a health care speech. Apparently she's big into Twitter. I'm not, although we post things there. And back then, less than a year ago, the hapless Ms. Rubin wrote, "The only idea dumber than this speech was strapping the Irish setter to the top of the car." She's a big Romney supporter today. Should actually be on his campaign staff, but might as well work at the Washington Compost. But back to our friend Ann Coulter. 3 cheers for Romney Care. Let's see here. It was precisely this free rider problem. In other words, people going into hospitals, including state hospitals, costing the state government money, free riders. This free rider problem that Romney Care was designed to address the only way a governor can. In addition to mandating that everyone purchase health insurance, Romney Care used the $1.2 billion that the state was already spending on medical care for the uninsured to subsidize the purchase of private health care for those who couldn't afford it. Isn't it funny now that he's running for the Republican nomination of president, he said, "I'm not worried about the poor. I'm not worried about those people that Romney Care was intended to take care of. Look, if there are holes, I'll fix it. Those people, they're taken care of. And I'm not worried about the rich like me. No, I'm worried about the middle class." How about being worried about the American people and the rule of law and the private sector and private property rights and individual liberty? How about being worried about those things rather than talking like a leftist? Maybe in her next column, 3 cheers for Romney Care, Ann will write 3 cheers for the poor who have their safety net. So as governor, he did all of this because he was concerned about those getting a free ride. It's just unfair. And those who couldn't afford insurance. Sounds just like a liberal. So what we're going to do is create a great medical system. The federal government imposes all this stuff on a governor, so I'll do the best I can to come up with our ideal medical system. But we're going to tell private industry what to do. We're going to tell individual citizens what to do. In the name of fairness and equity. And in the name of the poor. He's fixing the safety net. That's what any governor would do, right? Problem is, every governor didn't do it. You want to look at a governor who fights like hell and makes progress. You look at Scott Walker in Wisconsin. Look what he's fighting. There are all kinds of federal laws that tie his hands, involving public sector unions and their right to organize, involving public education, federal dollars coming in for public sector employees, all kinds of rules attached to this, and yet he manages to take it on. And whereas Ted Kennedy stood right next to Romney and they were both almost exchanging spit with each other, and we have that video and audio, because Ted Kennedy apparently, Mr. Big Government Universal Socialist Healthcare, he must have thought this was a really conservative state plan, this Romney Care, and this is all Romney could do. You don't find Scott Walker standing next to politicians like that. In fact, politicians like that hate Scott Walker. They're trying to take him out. And I assume if Romney Care was so super popular that Mitt would have stood and chanced a second term, but he didn't. She writes, what went wrong with Romney Care wasn't a problem in the bill, but a problem in Massachusetts. Democrats, now let me tell you something, Ann. That's always a problem. You see, when George W. Bush helped bail out GM and Chrysler by taking money out of TARP in violation of the separation of powers doctrine because Congress had refused to do it, and also twisting that statute, using it as a slush fund, many of us argued at the time, many people argued at the time, don't do it, Mr. President. You'll be laying the foundation for future presidents. And by golly, in comes Barack Obama, takes what Bush did and runs with it. The precedent, in many respects, being set. See, and that's the problem. There's always going to be Democrats. There's always going to be leftists. There's always going to be people like this. You think Romney was going to be governor forever? His brilliant, ingenious plan was going to be untouched? Of course not. 3 cheers for Romney Care, writes Ann. And Coulter, First, the overwhelmingly Democratic legislature set the threshold for receiving the subsidy so that it included people making just below the median income in the United States, a policy known as redistribution of income. For more on this policy, see Marx, Karl. Gee, that was utterly unpredictable. A massively, overwhelmingly Democrat state legislature, state Senate, might actually take Romney Care as a basis and do other things to it. That could never happen, could it? That was totally unpredicted, wasn't it? Then liberals destroyed the group rate, no-frills private insurance plans allowed under Romney Care, i.e. the only kind of health care insurance a normal person would want to buy, but which is banned in most states, by adding dozens of state mandates, including requiring insurers to cover chiropractors and vitro fertilization, a policy known as pandering to lobbyists. Well, we know they do this in advance, and don't we? Don't we? Which is why when you set the foundation as a Republican governor for this sort of thing, you have to assume through experience and reason that it's going to be treated differently by the left, because they always do it. She writes, for more on pandering and lobbyists, see Gingrich, Newt. Yes, that's an actual person's first name. Very clever. Is Mitt an actual person's first name? Just curious. What is his first name? Do we know, Mr. Producer? I don't know. Willard. Oh, okay. Well, Ann, I noticed you didn't put your hero's first name in your piece. Willard. If we want to get stupid, I can play the game. Romney's critics, such as Rick Santorum, charged that the governor should have known that Democrats would wreck whatever reforms he attempted. Gee, you think? They have, but no more than they would have wrecked health care in Massachusetts without Romney Care. That's the defense? Liberals are liberals, Democrats are Democrats, so what the hell? Cares what a Republican governor does? They're going to screw up a state anyway. Really? Is that why we elect Republicans as governor? This is absurd. One of the reasons we elect Republicans, I hope, is we demand some leadership. We hope that they will explain to the citizenry generally why liberals are wrong, why statists, utopian statists are wrong, and why we're right. Did Romney ever do that when he was promoting Romney Care? No, he's standing right next to Ted Kennedy, his main collaborator, or primary, or top, or one of the top. That was one of the times he was reaching across the aisle, I believe, Ann. Democrats could use a sunny day as an excuse to destroy the free market, redistribute income, and pander to lobbyists. That's exactly the point. You're making my point. Does that mean Republicans should never try to reform anything and start denouncing sunny days? No. This isn't reform. It's big government. There's a difference. This is how liberals speak. Reform isn't government imposition of an individual mandate in the name of fairness, equity. You don't tear down the building, burn down the building, because you're trying to address 3, 4, 8% of the problem. Santorum has boasted of his role in passing welfare reform in the 1990s. You know what the Democrats' 2009 stimulus bill dismantled? That's right, the welfare reform that passed in the 90s. Isn't that interesting, though? Santorum helped do something very logical, conservative. He tried to undo the welfare state to some extent so people would be freed from entitlements, so they would learn the value of work and appreciate it, change their spirit, return to the American spirit. She compares that to Romney Care and says because liberals can undo it. Why do that? Liberals can undo a lot, but you still fight the good fight. The problem is Romney Care was not the good fight. It was a bad fight. She concludes the problem isn't health care insurance mandates. The problem isn't Romney Care. The problem isn't welfare reform. The problem is Democrats. Actually, Ann, the problem is leftists and Republicans who play along with them. Shame, shame, shame. Now notice I did that. Took a lot of time because it needed to be done. And not because of Ann, but because those who seek to promote Romney Care as something other than it is need to have that addressed. Notice, nothing personal, nothing vicious, nothing poisonous, just point by point,